All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I see that there's some people still jumping in, but we have so much to cover today that I am going to be like off to the races. So in order to get everything in that I want to share with you all, I am just going to jump right in. If you have any questions, I would encourage you to type them into the Zoom chat, and Karen is going to be available watching for those questions. She'll jump in and interrupt me and ask them as we need to. So with that, I am so excited to welcome you to what I believe is probably our first webinar of the year, 5 ways to engage with your remote team. I am Erica Fujimoto, Director of Default Services here at Affinity. And basically what that means is that I work with law firms in the default servicing and mortgage default, I guess, mortgage default servicing and real estate areas. But I am uniquely qualified to talk to you about this topic today because not only have I been working from home on and off since about 2007 and full time since 2009, but I've also managed teams both in person and remotely. And currently, my entire team is virtual. We have one team member on our team who he works in an office sometimes, but none of the people in that office actually work with my team either. So we're all located in different states and we are all working remotely. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about the idea of letting your people work from home. I don't think that a lot of law firms and legal departments are used to letting their people work remotely. Although I will say that after 2020, it might be clear to almost everyone that it is possible, and many of you might have already started experiencing some of the benefits of letting your people work from home. There might be some on the call who haven't really bought into that idea yet of letting your employees work from home. And among all of the excuses that I've heard and all of the reasons that firms are hesitant to let their people work from home, the one that stands out the most to me is, how are we going to know that they're working? And that leads me to this first question underneath here, which is, how do you know they're working when they're in the office? I mean, I would argue that unless you're standing behind the person, watching them work all day long, knowing whether they're working when they're in the office isn't a whole lot different than knowing when they're working when they're at home. It has more to do with work product than it does physical location. You know that someone is getting work done because they're bringing it into your office. They're handing you a pleading to review, or they're emailing that pleading to you from the other room. You know that they're getting that work done. You may at your firm have a case management system and you might be able to track work that way. But most of the time, there is some way that we are knowing that people are working. It has nothing to do with where they're located, but everything to do with looking at that work product. So that leads us to whether or not managing remotely is any different than managing people who are in the office. And the answer to this, I think, is really sort of complicated. It's yes and no. Although my current team is completely remote, and like I said, I've worked with teams that are in person as well. It is different for some reasons, and it's the same for others. So I did some research and pulled up some Gallup statistics, and these are some of the things that are the same with regard to people who are working remotely and people who are working in the office. We know that engaged employees are 21% more productive. So people who are engaged in your office are going to get 21% more work done. Companies with engaged employees report 22% higher profitability. Well, not really surprising, right? If they're getting 21% more work done, they're getting about the same amount of increase in profitability. However, and this is where my stomach drops, only 12% of our employees are actually engaged. Let's look at that the other way around, right? And hopefully I'll do the math right here. 88% of your people are not engaged. And why are they not engaged? Well, here's the next interesting fact. Managers account for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement. That means you and me. That means that it's our fault that people aren't engaged, at least to the tune of 70%. And I'm going to come back to that number 70% quite often. So you'll want to remember that. We as managers account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement. Now, I see there being two types of management. One is active management, and the other is passive management. And frankly, when I first became a manager, I assumed that everybody would want to be managed the same way that I like to be managed, which is sort of more the passive route. I figured that if I told my team, hey guys, I am so excited to be working with you. I am here for you. Whatever you need, reach out to me. I am not going to be looking over your shoulder. I'm not going to be babysitting you. I'm going to give you the work to do and I'm going to trust you to get it done. And if you need me for anything, let me know. It didn't work. Literally, I fell flat on my face. It was a complete disaster. Most of my team evidently needed a more active manager, and they, as a result, suffered as a team. The team had poor team health. They didn't communicate with each other. They didn't communicate with me. Nobody ever called me to tell me that they needed anything. I don't really know exactly why that was. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't want to seem less than. They didn't want it to seem like they didn't know what they were doing or needed my help because they thought that I was expecting them to be independent. And if they came to me, maybe it wouldn't seem like they were independent. So they just didn't come to me. I mean, long story short, it was a mess. So I figured out at that point that people really needed a more active manager. Now, here's where we get to the differences between the people who work in your office and the people who work at home. Remote workers tend to be more ambitious, happier, sick less often, and feel that they have better work-life balance. I think that we all know these things from experiencing working from home. I mean, last year aside, because that, let's be honest, is not what normal working from home looks like. Usually you're not a babysitter and a teacher and all of those things all at the same time. But if you're regularly working from home like I do, nobody bothers me all day long. I'm working just like I would be when I was in the office. Remote workers also tend to need more inspiration and motivation from their managers in order to achieve their full potential. So this is really interesting because it again begs the question, as managers, what is different? And that 70%, that's on us, right? The 70% of people being engaged at work has to do with us, and this is where that comes in. It is our job to help to inspire and motivate our team members. And if we talk about that at the same time as active management, it's important to note that there's a difference between oversight and babysitting and watching over someone's shoulder and holding them accountable for getting their jobs done. So, like I said, for me, that passive management might work fine, and you might have one or two people that passive management works for. But I will say that nobody is, I can't think of the right word that I'm looking for here, but nobody is going to be less engaged because their managers are more active. So as a manager, you really want to focus on being more of that active manager in that active role. So what is engagement? It's been suggested that engagement is tied to an emotional connection and a commitment to your firm and to your firm's goals. And as the manager, you're really the kingpin in that engagement, motivation, and inspiration. And it's not always an easy role. I mean, frankly, I don't know of a single manager out there. Actually, maybe I know of one, and she actually works at our company. I don't know very many managers who have one job. Most of us aren't just managers. I mean, I am a manager. I do sales and marketing. I do project management. I do customer engagement. I mean, I do all different things, and I'm a manager. But because of that 70% of our employee engagement depends on us, it's important to remember that the most important role that you play is the role you play as a manager. So that really needs to be your central focus. Your people, and I know everyone says this and has beat this into the ground, your people are your greatest asset. And they really deserve your time and your focus. It's the least that we can do for our people. So that brings me into our 5 keys. The first is to set and manage expectations. We want to define goals for our people, and we want to make sure that those are SMART goals. And I have the acronym here for you so that we don't have to go through that. But people working from home complete their tasks 39% faster than people who are working in the office. But in order to do that, they need to have clear and measurable goals. Don't just say, the expectation is that you're going to respond to your clients' emails in a timely fashion. You want to set the amount of time that they need to get that task done and what they should do when they're not able to get that task done in that time frame. And you want to tell them the why behind what they're required to do. Understanding as an employee where you fit in and your employees understanding where they fit in, it's really important and it goes a long way as a motivational factor. The next item is providing assistance with time management and prioritization. Now, this is an interesting one because my boss, Debbie Foster, the managing partner here at Affinity, and I years ago had discussions about this. And we both kept coming back to the same thing. Our people get paid way too much money to have a babysitter. And so we shouldn't have to manage their time for them and help them with the prioritization. But we were wrong. That is our job. That is the essence of our job as managers. Because again, remember that 70%. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but that 70% is critical. And not everyone is good at time management and prioritization. So, things that we can do as managers that are not babysitting, but still helping them to be able to do these things are providing time management training. I mean, there's lots of free videos out there everywhere, including on the Affinity Insight page. You can pull up videos on time management training, helping your people to know how to calendar time to work on certain types of projects or work and put it and blocking that time on their calendars. Maybe you utilize a task management tool or a case management system that has workflow built in that can prompt people of what they need to be doing. Sharing information with team members can also aid in prioritization. Recently, right before Christmas, I had a meeting with one of my team members, and we were talking about all of the different projects that he was working on. And he was telling me in what order he was planning on working on them. And I brought some additional insight into that discussion. I told him, I'm having calls with our clients because I'm the project manager. And so I'm having these regular calls with the clients. And this particular client had a bit of an issue, and it was more urgent than some of the other things he was planning on working on. And so I was able to share that information with him, and he was really thankful. He said, look, if we hadn't had this phone call, I never would have known that I needed to prioritize that particular project. And so if we're not sharing that information with each other, then our team members don't even really know how to prioritize what's most important or when something has happened and they need to maybe fast track a particular task that they're doing that they normally wouldn't have to fast track. So for our team, we actually do project reviews. I was doing them last year. We were doing them one-on-one. So for about a half an hour a week, I would spend with each team member going through every one of their projects and tasks and talking through what order they were going to get those done in, if they had any challenges, if there was anything they needed from me to get it done, all of that different information. And this year, for many different reasons, but primarily relating back to that conversation I had with that team member, we decided that it would be better as a team to have these meetings as team meetings. So now, starting this year, and we just did one last week and it worked out really well, we met as a team and went through every single project. And the benefit and value to that is not only fostering that team communication and working together, even though we're remote, but also that it helps us because then I don't have to call everybody else and say that client has that problem. I can say it one time and everybody gets the benefit of hearing that. And somebody else on the team might say, hey, did anybody realize this? And everybody's getting to hear it. And so it saves us time and allows us to work together as a team and for everybody to know what are the expectations and when am I needing to get that work done. Another team member mentioned that he likes the way that as managers here at Affinity, we set the expectations and we have those regularly scheduled project follow-up time because it allows him to feel like he has oversight and he has managers there to help him, but he doesn't feel like there's someone standing over his shoulder. So the next item on the list is giving employees a sense of belonging. And this goes back to that emotional connection that I was talking about. A sense of belonging is critical, especially when your people are working remote and they might feel very disconnected from the company. And one of my team members mentioned that he likes here, and I interviewed all of my team members, so I have a lot of information and feedback that they gave me in preparation for this session. He said that he likes that remote employees are not treated as an afterthought here as they were at his own firm, his old firm. So, in order to do that and to foster that sense of belonging and help people feel that emotional connection, some of the things you can do are to communicate more regularly with them. Don't just leave them out there in the wind. They are employees just like the ones that you can see outside of your office, and you want to communicate with them just as often, if not more, than you are communicating with the people who are in your office with you. Having check-ins, regular check-ins, and these check-ins that I'm referring to are really just quick, maybe just a message. Maybe if you have an instant messaging system in your firm, or shooting them a quick email. Hey, happy Monday. How's everything going? How was your weekend? I heard that your mother was sick. Is everything okay? All of those different things, just checking in with them and seeing if everything's okay. It's your job to know if your people are at the peak of their ability to perform. And so knowing how they're doing is really important, and checking in with them is going to help you with that. You want to be available. Just like you can't see them outside of your office, they can't see you in your office. So they have no idea when you're available and when you aren't available. If you have a system, a messaging system, for example, we use Microsoft Teams, and we can see when people are green and red. Make sure that you are setting your green so that people are able to reach you. If it's always red, they're not going to know when they can get to you. Or maybe you'll have a block of time on your calendar that's your office hours, and that's when they can reach out to you and get with you. You want to be available as much as you can, because again, they're not seeing you sitting in your office. You want to get to know your team members personally and professionally. Now, you might say, well, I don't want to be friends with my team members, so how much do I need to know about them personally? You don't need to be friends with your team members, and frankly, you need to be careful about keeping that separation to a certain extent. But you do want to get to know them. You want to know what makes them tick. You want to know what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what stresses them out, what sets them off. Again, we are looking as managers to get peak performance out of our people, and knowing how they are impacted by different things personally is going to really help you to be able to provide them with that management style that they need, and that assistance anytime that they need it. So you want to be truly interested in the people on your team. You want to really be paying attention and learning, because here's the other thing. You can't see their faces. Well, I mean, I guess you can if you're on webcams, but we're not always on webcams. So you're not always seeing their faces. You're going to have to start to learn to read their moods by hearing the tone of their voice, when they're pausing, even the tone of their emails. You need to learn about your people so that you can be the best manager that you can be for those people. Schedule one-on-one so that you can learn about what's going on in their lives. This is different than the project meetings that I was talking about a few minutes ago. One-on-ones are critical, and it's also different from the check-ins that I mentioned, where you're just shooting them a quick message and saying, how are you doing? One-on-ones are usually regularly scheduled time, whether it is once a week, once every other week. I would argue that once a month is probably not quite enough, but you want to be meeting with your people regularly and just hopping on the phone and saying, how's everything doing? Are you okay? Is there anything that I can do to help you? I'm here for you. What's going on? Do you have any problems? Anything that you need me to bring to upper management? Anything at all. You want to check in with them and see how things are going. It's not really meant to be a time to check in and say, are you getting all your work done? That's your job to figure that out separately. This is the time for you to be spending time getting to know your people. And this is one of the areas that I get the most pushback on from managers. And I hear it from law firms all the time. In fact, years ago, that one of the law firm managing partners said to me, my people don't have time to have one-on-ones with their staff members. They're too busy for that. And I would argue that if you are not having one-on-ones with your team members, especially the ones who are virtual, but also the ones who are in person, you're not really managing them. You're not getting to know them. You're not going to be able to provide them with the type of management that they need, and you're not going to be engaging them. And that 12%, that's what your number is going to look like at your firm. You're only going to have 12% of your people engaged because your managers aren't able to engage them because they don't know their people. So those one-on-ones are hypercritical. They are non-negotiable. If your people have too many people that they are managing in order to have one-on-ones, then they either need to have less outside duties other than managing, or you need to have lower level managers. Maybe you have your managers who manage supervisors, and those managers have one-on-ones with those supervisors, and the supervisors have one-on-ones with the staff lower than them. And maybe even for larger firms, that might go into a team lead scenario where you have managers, supervisors, team leads. Whatever it might be at your firm, you have to remember that it's all about creating that connection with your people. And if you're not having those one-on-ones and regular check-ins, you're probably not knowing what's going on. Working from home can be really lonely sometimes. And if you're not getting as much feedback from your manager because they're not standing over your shoulder or they're not a stone's throw away, then they're going to feel separate and they're not going to feel that sense of belonging that they would feel if they were in the office. Again, asking them, how can I help? And don't forget to use the phone. I mean, there's only so much that we can communicate by email and instant message. Pick up the phone and talk to your people sometimes. You need to hear their voice. Again, you're not seeing them in person most of the time. So that hearing that tone of voice and what's going on is really important. And my team mentioned that they really enjoy having the webcams on, particularly during team meetings. We don't do it as much during our one-on-ones and things like that, probably more because I like to pace when I'm talking on the phone to people. But having the webcams on during team meetings, my team said that it makes our meetings go faster, and because everyone's engaged, it's very difficult for people to multitask when everyone is looking at the screen and seeing each other. And so they really enjoy that. One last thing I want to mention is that, working from home might be a benefit to the people from your firm. But if there's added benefits that people get from working in the office that your people who are working from home aren't able to enjoy, then those people who are working from home might be resentful. And this is an area where we had to pay a lot of attention to this at Affinity because we like to have cake on birthdays. And so when you work in the office, they bring in a cake and everybody eats the cake. And not only do they eat the cake, they send out pictures to everybody of them eating the cake. And I didn't get any cake because I've worked from home for the last 10 years, right? So, if I'm bothered by the fact that I'm not getting any cake and everybody else is getting to eat their cake, then your people are probably bothered by little things like that. Now, a little mini cake doesn't cost that much money. You could have one sent to your people. You could send them a birthday card. You could send them a tiny care package. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. You can send them a gift card or tell them that they can buy lunch on the firm, which probably costs about the same amount of money as that cake cost for the people who had it in the office. We used to say here at Affinity that because you have all of the added benefits of working from home, that it's okay that people in the office get to have different benefits that you don't get to enjoy. And I think that it's important to note that anything that is going to make your people feel disconnected and unhappy, especially when it's something as little as that you can fix, is something that you should work on and be aware of. And it's a way to help your people feel connected. A PricewaterhouseCoopers survey found that 60% of respondents would like to have feedback on a daily or weekly basis. And for your people under age 30, that number jumps to 70%. So no matter how you're providing that feedback, any of these methods that I've shared here, you want to make sure that in some way you're providing that feedback to your people. Number 3, we want to promote collaboration amongst our teams. We want to encourage them to share knowledge with each other, and we want to make it easier to find information. Knowing where the information is saved goes a long way to that sense of belonging, and it also promotes that connection that your employees need with their firm. So we actually use Engagedly. It's a employee engagement platform. It's really great, and I can talk to you about it offline if anyone's interested. But the Engagedly platform has a location where we can save information. And so we save some of our key firm information here. In your firm, you might have an intranet or there might be a place where you're saving this, but you want to make sure that it's a centralized location, easy to find, everybody has access. In ours, you can see I just did a small screenshot of some of the information. We had to do an inventory survey, so people were scheduling their inventory surveys. We use disc wheels for communication and knowing different people's communication styles, so it has an all affinity disc wheel. We have a confidential suggestion box so that if people don't want to make suggestions directly, they can do that. And then this last one here is a screenshot from our employee locations and time zones, and we also have all of their addresses, which was fantastic because it meant that without going and trying to collect this information, because let's be honest, I was not going to collect people's addresses, I was able to send everybody in the company a Christmas card. And it was as easy as that because I had that information. And I wouldn't have even sent those cards probably if I didn't have those addresses at the ready. So sharing that information is really helpful. Making your firm performance records, firm vision statements, corporate culture, goals, and all of that other type of information more available and readily accessible helps your remote employees also know how their role contributes to the company's overall success. So you want to make all of that information more available and accessible. Having team retreats, which, surprise, surprise, cost a whole lot less when we're doing them remotely than they do when we're doing them in person. Team retreats, company retreats. I mean, we have gotten such amazing feedback from our teams about the retreats that we've had and the type of camaraderie and teamwork that those are able to foster. It's just a great thing. I can't even say enough about having retreats. Encourage peer-to-peer feedback so that your employees can learn from each other. Now, this is another area where we're able to utilize the Engagedly platform. Of course, people can give each other feedback all the time, and so you want to be encouraging your people to do that. They can shoot each other an email, they can call each other on the phone, but they can also share it through Engagedly here, where basically what it does is, in this case, I was asked to share feedback about a particular employee, but any employee can pull it up and share feedback about any other employee, and they can make it confidential or they can make it so that that person can see it. They can just send it to the manager. They can send it to both the person and their manager. Different ways to share that feedback with each other. Number 4, we want to keep our team members happy. So in order to do that, we want to encourage them to share their ideas and feedback and to hear them. And the reason that this is important is because our happy employees are likely to be more engaged in their work, and remote workers really want to be part of the decision making in your firm. So, in order for them to be part of that, we need to empower the remote employees to make their own decisions and implement their own ideas. This might be a little scary. Letting go of that power and letting people try new things might be scary, but honestly, that's how greatness is discovered. Empowered employees are 50% more engaged. So you want to try to empower your employees so that they can be 50% more engaged. You want to make additional training opportunities available for your team members and take advantage of additional training for yourself. There are a lot of statistics that say that most employees believe that managers could use more training on how to be good managers. So, as much as you can take advantage of any of that type of training is great. Upgrading hardware, getting somebody a new mouse or a monitor, that can really make team members happy. And it's little things. It doesn't have to necessarily be expensive things. Changing the routine or the hours to help them perform better. If you're in a firm where you're able to do that, that would be great. Encourage virtual coffee breaks or lunches. I mean, honestly, this is not something that people normally think about on their own. And the other thing you might want to do is schedule more time for team building and socialization activities. We've done virtual happy hours with actual alcohol because guess what? They're at home. So they can drink at home. They don't have to drive home. It's even better than when they're at happy hour out after work. Online games, we've done Jeopardy, Two Truths and a Lie, we've done Pictionary. You could do a company core values workshop, which kills two birds with one stone. They can learn more about your company, which helps them to feel more connected, which helps them to be more engaged. It's this cycle that we need to be following and engaged in. And last but not least, we recently did a vision boarding session, and that was really awesome time as a team. Some people did it virtually, some people did it with a physical board and cut things out and put it up there. But that was a really great time for people to be able to connect socially because your remote employees might not take the time to connect and socially with their coworkers as much as they would if they were in the office. Number 5, Celebrate wins with recognition. I've been showing on a few different screens here some screenshots from Bonusly, which is a system that we use here at Affinity to recognize people. First, I'd like to say that you want to be sure that people are recognizing each other privately. Your employees really want to be valued, and saying thank you to them goes so much further than you would think. Let people know that their hard work has not gone unnoticed. Tell them how lucky the firm is to have them there. But making recognition visible through a public portal that you use in your firm, like Bonusly, can also be really great because it allows people to not only shout out to each other, but all the managers can see the different shout outs that are happening. You can see who's being recognized. You can add bonus points on to some of the shout outs if you want to. Now, Bonusly comes with a cost, and so your firm may or may not be interested in utilizing that particular portal, but other systems, sorry, the cost to Bonusly is because you're giving bonuses to your actual people. Those points will turn into bonus money that they can cash in. But there are systems out there that cost much less money and don't involve a bonus that are really just for shout outs. Engagedly has a portal similar to that, and so that's something that you can do as well. Giving shout outs for things that are personal achievements. I mean, I was one who was really hesitant to do this because why would I be celebrating somebody because it's their birthday by giving them bonus points? But shout outs for those types of things and anniversaries and saying to people, I know you're there and I am, just reaching out and saying happy birthday. And it's a great thing. People really do love it. I mentioned the gift boxes and thank you cards. I sent thank you cards one time to my team. I gave them each a different thank you card. I wrote a very specific message to each of them that had to do with them and their challenges and the things that I was grateful for about each of them. And one of them actually called my boss on the phone because he was so blown away that he couldn't believe I had sent him a thank you card. All it was a thank you card. It wasn't $1,000 bonus. And it made him so over the moon happy. That was a win, right? So we want to make sure that we are celebrating everyone's wins with that recognition. Finally, I just want to share a few things that you can do as a firm. The first thing is to implement a work from home policy. Decide who can work from home and when, and make that information known to the people who work at your firm. Schedule working hours, whatever those might be. Those may be flexible or not flexible, but scheduling those working hours, possibly requiring working conditions. For example, we require an office with a door as much as we can require that, but we require an office with a door, Wi-Fi capabilities and security. I mean, some people might never have thought about this, but we have required Wi-Fi settings that we want people to have, and security and speeds. I mean, there's people still using dial-up out there, I think. Clean desk policies, any type of policy, working conditions, whatever it is that you might be requiring for your people who are working from home, you want to make sure that you've set that information. Using video conferencing is really amazing. I mean, there's lots of different options out there for video conferencing. You want to make sure that you're utilizing video conferencing, encourage people to have their webcams turned on as much as possible. Cloud storage is a really important one. Remember when I mentioned centralizing where things are saved? You may be using a system like NetDocuments, or you might be saving them in your case management system. You might be using something like Microsoft Teams, but you want to use some type of storage where people have access to the information no matter where they're working from. Chat tools like Microsoft Teams can really help to let your remote people reach out to each other more quickly and not have to necessarily call before they find out if the person's available. Shooting them a quick message and saying, hey, are you free to talk right now, is really helpful. Collaborational software like Microsoft Teams, and this is something that we've started using more and more, creating channels for our different teams to be able to share information with each other, possibly reduce the amount of email traffic internally, and having people communicate a little bit more that way. Providing accountability metrics. So some of that reporting that I was mentioning before that might be coming through your case management system, self-reporting when necessary, and giving your managers the tools to manage effectively, whether that's additional management training or giving them the time to manage, and recognizing that they may have too many things on their plates. Engagement software, like I mentioned with Engagedly, which it really has this cool feature of 360-degree manager feedback, so your people can also give feedback to you as the manager, and feedback platforms like Bonusly, like I mentioned, And finally, make sure that you're measuring your employee satisfaction. You can use things like Microsoft Forms, and there's other survey programs out there that you can utilize to measure your employee satisfaction. And don't be afraid to ask the question, because I think we would all agree that we would rather hear the answer, even if it upsets us, and be able to make improvements than to be oblivious to how our people are feeling. We did a work-life balance survey, and we were surprised that there were a couple people who didn't feel that they had the work-life balance that we thought that they did. And if we hadn't asked the question, we wouldn't have known the answer, and we wouldn't have been able to delve deeper into that, figure it out, and make corrections. I will acknowledge that some of this is going to take an investment, but it's important to note that $11,000 a year, approximately, is saved by firms who leverage remote work policies. And also, on top of that, your remote workers are typically more productive, to the tune of, I think the number was 22%, and more profitable to the tune of 22%. So you will make back these investments. And so it's something for you to be thinking about as a firm. Now, I am obviously over on time. I knew that I would be. You guys can contact me and connect with me anytime. Karen, did we have any questions out there?
We did have a couple, but they were easy and I was able to help them.
Okay.
Especially one asking about suggestions for team retreats. So we'll get back to her offline and share what we know.
Okay, yeah, no, that's an awesome thing. We at Affinity do help firms to put on team retreats. So if you do have anything about that or anything that I've talked about today and you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to me. Karen's going to be sending out the PowerPoint with these slides. You can also reach out and contact Karen to schedule a 30-minute consultation. We have more webinars coming soon, so join those webinars, jump into that bit.ly link and register for anything that interests you. Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.